And welcome back to today's What If. Now, this will be a longer one-shot, but it will still be a one-shot. And this one-shot comes to us from Aiden Hightower. We're asked the question, what if Spider-Man was a Saiyan? Or at least half Saiyan? It's an interesting idea. Now, here's the thing. In the comic, I couldn't tell you how that would go down in the comics because there's been so many comics of Spider-Man. Spider-Man's existed for so long, different continuities, different universes. God, I think he's been around since, what, the 60s, 50s? 60s, I think. So he's been around for literally 60 years, give or take. Almost 60 years. Spider-Man has a long history. So it'd be impossible for me to tell you how him being a Saiyan would go in any like the universe, because that'd just be way too broad, too many what ifs and all that. Too many what ifs within the what if. And I'm not going to, I wouldn't talk about any of the animated series, mostly because the only one I can even vaguely remember is the animated series from the 90s and from Fox. And really, I can't remember all of it. I haven't watched any of the other ones. But what I can remember verbatim, well, close to verbatim, and actually do with some cohesion, is the movies. So let's hypothetically say that in this what if, we are talking about the Spider-Man movies. That's why I used Far From Home when making the thumbnail. So what if Peter Parker, Spider-Man, was did you say Saiyan or half Saiyan? No, yeah, half Saiyan. Man, what if he was half Saiyan? So what if, now here's the easy way I can actually see doing this. What if the spider that bit him not only was radioactive, but in fact had genetic material from an alien that was crash landed, they found for Oscorp, or wherever the spider came from in this universe. I think it was Oscorp in this universe. And it was Saiyan DNA before the Saiyan actually died. So he actually has some Saiyan DNA because of that. So when he gets the spider powers, he becomes Spider-Man, but half Saiyan. So right off the bat, obviously he's got the abilities of a spider. A Saiyan doesn't naturally know how to fly. That's something you have to learn. I don't think Spider-Man would gain the ability to fly. Or unless he used Ki Blast, because Goku never did that up until he saw Roshi do it, and up until he learned the technique to fly later on. So you're not going to get any Ki Blasts, or because that's something you need to train to do, or flying from Spider-Man. But what you will get is increase in strength, overall ability, power, because he still does theoretically have an aura of energy he can use. It's just, his actual battle strength, increasing his physical capabilities to the umpteenth degree. And there is this little fact that if he looks at the moon, it'll turn into an ape, a spider monkey. Spider monkey! We'll get on Ben 10 in this shit. So let's assume after he gets bit that, that's when he gets the spider powers, or the Saiyan powers. So when he wakes up in the morning after, he's just showing up, he realizes he's got a tail. It's like, what the hell is this? And he pulls it, and he realizes, what is that? And we're starting, by the way, with the Tobey Maguire movies. We'll go through all of them, but we're starting obviously from the beginning. So he pulls on the tail, like, what is going on here? And then he's just like, and he just starts pulling. He's like, what is this? Oh God. And he's freaking out because he's got a tail. He's like, he can't go to school like this. So he pulls it, it hurts, but he pulls it off. Now, because he's already got the enhanced strength of Spider-Man plus Saiyan physiology, and he's not going to get Zenkai or anything like that, but he yanks it off without too much difficulty. So it actually circumvents the Uzaru form. But now you just got him going through the motions, basically. Everything that happens for, like, the high school portion of things still happens. Up until you get to Uncle Ben dying. And Uncle Ben dying? First off, his Super Saiyan hair would look ridiculous when you see Tobey Maguire's hair in that movie. But, oh man, Uncle Ben dying sets him off. Now, I'm not going to go into what kind of power level he would have, because I would have to figure out power levels for everyone to match them up, and that's just dumb. But basically, he realizes all this rage and sorrow and anger in him is starting to affect the surrounding. Like, people are actually starting to quiver and shake around. It's like, what is it? Because this energy aura is just suddenly surrounding him. He's glowing yellow. He isn't fully transformed yet, but he's glowing yellow, and he's Uncle Ben. It's Peter, and even Uncle Ben is just kind of like, what's going on with you, Peter? Peter, what hurt you? And then Peter, and then he dies. Like, Uncle Ben, and basically he hears that they cornered the guy in the warehouse, because in that, I believe that happened very quickly after the fact. Not quite there, but after the fact. But still, everyone's now scared of this Parker boy, and he's just like, what was this? What is this? Another power the ability the spider gave me? What spiders glow? It turns out I'm pretty certain there are luminescent spiders, so and he thinks maybe that was what it is. Finds the guy, and at this point, he finds the guy in the warehouse, and he's you. And as the guy tries to shoot him, he literally is he's now just blind rage. He goes Super Saiyan for the first time, and the bullet just bounces right off. And he just realizes it's his fault. He let the guy go, and it's able to calm him down, but he's still in that Super Saiyan form. And the guy tries to shoot him again, but he just throws his arm up, and the energy just throws him out of the window. And he basically killed that guy. I think a few people kind of realize Spider-Man killed a guy. Spider-Man killed the guy in Tobey Maguire movies that killed Uncle Ben. So now we have Super Saiyan Peter out and about. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. So obviously he makes the actual Spider-Man suit, goes to fight crime, starts practicing because he trained with his webs. He starts practicing with this whole energy field because he felt just how powerful he got. And it takes a while for him to get it. He has to find locations that no one's going to bother interrupting him in. But he eventually does get it down. And now you have Super Saiyan Spider-Man running around in New York. So when the Goblin eventually shows up, remember, when Spider-Man fought the Goblin the first time, the Goblin literally just caught his punch. It's like, impressive! Just caught his punch like it was nothing. And Spider-Man is strong. Like, if every Spider-Man is theoretically the same level of strength that we see, roughly, it's just not depicted all the time in the same way. You know what I mean? Even though they may all have the same strength level, we don't actually see the extent of that strength shown, or at least in different ways we see it shown. And Goblin just caught that punch. This time when he throws the punch, Goblin tries to catch it, and he can still kind of perceive the movement. But then Peter and he's still not quite as strong as Goblin, but Goblin does struggle a bit more. And then he goes Super Saiyan and Goblin's like, what? And then he just boom, smacks Goblin into the ground. Goblin's armor does help him a little bit, but ultimately he's starting to get smacked around by Peter, who just webs him. And then the glider comes in. Peter just webs the glider, brings it to him, and smashes the glider. And then he's like, this is over. I don't know who you are, but you're going to jail. And then he just rips the mask off, and it's Norman Osborn's like, Norman, Mr. Osborn? Yes. And it's like, what are you? I'm Spider-Man, and just knocks him out. So now he's knocked out, proving he's the Goblin, he's in jail. So, with that said, that completely changes up the remainder of the movie. Because he's in jail now. He's alive, he's in jail. Even though he may have lawyers and money, it's clear that he already murdered a lot of people, so he's not getting off anytime soon, even with resources. So, and even if they make the insanity plea, he's still going to be incarcerated for some time. So now Harry's incarcerated. Now Harry's got to run the business while his dad's incarcerated. Mary Jane and him break up. Peter and Mary Jane hook up by the end of the movie because the Goblin never came after Mary Jane. Norman Osborn does not know who Spider-Man is. So you now have this complete 180 here. Don't get me wrong. The whole Mary leaving Harry and going for Peter won't happen instantaneously, but it will, or instantly, but it will still happen. Like, the Thanksgiving thing happens here. It's difficult for Harry, and Harry still acts like a jerk to Mary Jane just for different reasons. Probably because, his dad's in prison. He was a murderer and all that. But now Peter and Mary Jane are together by the end of the movie. So now we cut to Spider-Man 2. In Spider-Man 2, instead of him trying to get her attention, at this point, not only is he able to get her attention, but or not already together, but yes, like Spider-Man 3, I do think he's eventually told her that he is Spider-Man. And she accepts it and all that, and the trouble is going to come with that. Fortunately, though, they, he makes it, to the plays on time. He's doing the best to be a good boyfriend. They're happy. Doc Ock and the Tritium happens. So now Doc Ock goes, to rob the bank, and Spider-Man's there. Again, Spider-Man is just way too strong. It's just adding up. Because here's the thing. Take his physical strength into account real quick. whatever his maximum limits in this world are, because not every Spider-Man is created equally from comic to movie. Assuming that I'm trying to remember what his best strength feat honestly was. I think it was that the bridge scene showed off, I think, his best feat of strength, because the train sequence is impressive, but it's impressive for different reasons, because he's not stopping that with his pure strength alone. He's got to do webbing, he's got to slow down the train's movement, so it's not really a good representation of his actual strength at that point. And then you got the scene at the end with the sun going haywire, but still doesn't work off. Factoring that cart probably weighs a good couple tons. Let's say at least, I don't know the actual weight of a New York City street cart or anything like that. But and it wasn't a street cart. I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of like a trolley or something like that. Point being, it was like I know what it is. I'm blanking on the term. It's basically it's like a tram, but it's on you go between like spaces on the bridge with it. Point being, it probably weighs a good few tons. Spider-Man's usually depicted as being able to lift about 10 tons, like with his max potential. Because Spider-Man, while having super strength, isn't anywhere near as strong as I think a lot of people like to believe he is. He's very strong. Don't get me wrong. He can lift multiple tons, but he can't lift like 100 tons that easy. He can't do that. In fact, I don't think he can lift 100 tons, period. Hell, I don't think he can lift 1,000 pounds. Point being, though, I digress, is that if assuming that he can lift like 3 tons, let's say 3 tons, let's say the 10 ton is his maximum limit. You times that by 50, now you're looking at 500 tons he can lift. And that's lifting. That's not even talking about striking force, which generally speaking is actually a lot stronger than, lifting and striking are 2 different forms of strength. But if you count momentum and how much force you're able to exert, technically speaking, a punch is stronger than lifting because you're now channeling all the momentum and power into one focal point. So when the fight between Doc Ock and him happens, he beats the ever-loving snot out of Doc Ock. Like, he was punching Doc Ock in the original movie without being a Saiyan, and Doc Ock was still able to take some hits, even though he's still just a normal guy. But in this, Doc Ock literally just knocks Doc Ock out completely. And then he literally rips the arms apart, because at that point, he's strong enough to do that. He just rips the arms out, so he just has these nubs, and now Doc Ock is incarcerated in prison as well. So now what happens with Spider-Man 3? Now with Spider-Man 3, it gets a little interesting, because you still get Peter riding that high, riding that ego train, and you get Mary Jane, at that point, feeling neglected. Now, unlike before, Harry is still very supportive of his friend, all that. Even if he found out it was Spider-Man, he probably wouldn't hate him. Except for the fact that he put his dad in jail. But his dad's still alive, so even if he hated him for that, his dad's still alive. But Harry doesn't know, and Peter just kind of keeps it that way for now. Excuse me. Meanwhile, K. Marco gets released. K. Marco escapes, becomes a Sandman. The Venom symbiote happens, and Peter once again is focused on Marco. Now, their first interaction goes about the same way, because Marco is a very unique case for Spider-Man. If Spider-Man had access to energy blast, which he doesn't, then he might be able to actually permanently kill Marco, because the energy blast would basically superheat up the sand, crystallize it, turn it into glass, whatever. But he doesn't. All he's got is his pure strength, and it's just not enough. And Sandman gets away. So he's focusing now on Sandman, gets the Venom symbiote, so now he's Venom symbiote Super Saiyan Spider-Man. Beats the ever-loving crud out of Marco in the sewer. And then everything else kind of falls into place, minus the fact that Harry doesn't try to purposely mess up Peter and Mary Jane's relationship. He might do it involuntarily because MJ is vulnerable, and because remember that actually happened. MJ was vulnerable, and they actually did end up kissing while Harry was still suffering from amnesia. So I can see that still happening, but Harry would also feel vulnerable because his dad's gone and in jail. But ultimately, I think that still happens. And Harry this time feels like a complete dick. And he talks about, and he mentions it to Peter. He's like, I'm sorry, it was me. Things have been weird. It's like, this happened, this happened. Now, Peter with the Venom symbiote gets angry. But Harry does apologize to him as well. He's not blind to the fact. He's like, no, I'm the other guy. Didn't mean to happen. Just happened. I'm really sorry, Pete. And I was like, but this time they're like, yeah, it happened, and I don't know why it happened. I mean, my dad's been gone for so long, and I don't know how to process it, and I don't know what's going on with you and her, but clearly something's bothering her. I swear to you, Pete, it wouldn't have happened in any other circumstance. And Peter's pissed, but fortunately he can calm down just enough to be like, okay. He's like, I mean, talk to her, man. All I can say is I am sorry. I will leave you guys alone for now, if that's okay, because you're my friend. I never want to hurt you. You're my best friend. You're all I have left. And Peter is able to at least rein it in and be like, yeah, okay, yeah. And unfortunately, the symbiote is not fully taking hold of him, obviously, at this point. So he talks to MJ, and they have a very tense talk. And unfortunately, this is where the slap, I think, happens. It's not after some goofy emo Peter dance moment. No, it is. She apologized, and he starts yelling, and it's like, you think you can do this? Why did you do this? You know what I want? You do this, and then like, and then she tries to go like, Peter, you understand? And then he just smacks her, and he realized what he did. Like, oh shit, oh god, and he goes, and then that's where the scene of the bell tower happens, and yeah, first off, that would play out a lot better in the movie. But second off, it's like, yeah, that's what about how it happens. Now, the Venom symbiote eventually does go to Eddie Brock, obviously. But the problem here now for Spider-Man is that, and by the way, he has yet to receive any major Zenkais because he hasn't gone through those serious injury fights yet. That's about to change. Because now we get Venom, he captures Mary Jane, Spider-Man goes to help him. Now, he does not have Harry's help this time. He doesn't. Now, that's not to say Harry doesn't doesn't know about his dad's stuff. But he doesn't. But unlike before, he has no reason to go through with it. Like, he has it. Maybe he can find a way to make a profit on it, like for the military side. But he can't go through that. He doesn't see any reason because he doesn't want revenge on Spider-Man. So Spider-Man goes. Still, he's got Super Saiyan and all that. He's Spider-Man. Goes to Peter. He's like, Peter, watch out! Then Venom comes and boom. Knocks him away. Venom, mind you, has not been bonded to a normal Spider-Man. Normal Venom is already stronger than normal Spider-Man. He was bonded to a half Saiyan, Super Saiyan Spider-Man. So not only does he have the strength, he's got the ability to get a Zenkai because he's already absorbed DNA properties from the Saiyan biology in Spider-Man. And he might even be able to go, the Super Saiyan thing, he's already angry as hell. So I don't think we're going to get Super Saiyan Venom here. I don't even know how that would look. Because it's the symbiote that has it. It's not Eddie. So I don't even know how that look. Maybe he just gains the spiky hair or something. But anyway, his strength is well beyond that of normal Venom. And he starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Spider-Man. Just beating the hell. Now, Spider-Man's able to hold his own. He goes Super Saiyan and is able to, even the playing field. But even going Super Saiyan at this point only evens the playing field. Like, they're on par now. That's how much stronger Venom is here than he was in the original. And then Giant Sandman comes in. Venom, is able to get the upper hand on Peter. And, does the thing where he just starts beating the ever-loving hell out of Spider-Man. So, Harry's looking on this the whole time. He's wondering, there's got to be something I can do. And he's looking at TV and he's like, he remembers his dad's equipment. He's like, I don't have time to go and, expose myself to that crap. I just have what's available. But I don't know how to use this stuff. And, he's got to make a choice. So basically what he does is he calls a helicopter and he basically just takes takes the thing of pumpkin bombs and just boop, 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 and just throws it right into Sandman. And then, boom, blows out. The helicopter goes flying. He's able to barely hang on, but he hangs on. And Venom's like, what is that? And then Spider-Man comes in, just boom, smacks him back a bit. It's like, Harry, Spider-Man gets Harry, and I was like, Um, well, and the question is, why would he go help Spider-Man? He doesn't know Peter's Harry, or Peter's doesn't know Peter's Spider-Man. True, but I feel Harry feels like he can do something, and something about the situation. He knows Mary Jane is there because he saw it on there, so he knows a friend of his is there. So So there's a great excuse on that. I think that's an easy way to go about that. So Spider-Man goes this time. He webs up Sandman enough that he gets so he can get the firefighters to basically hose him down and melt him down into mud or whatever. No, so it's just Spider-Man and Venom now going toe-to-toe, and they go toe-to-toe, and they start beating the ever-loving piss out of each other, just back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, though, Peter figures out the sonic vibrations, parts the Venom symbiote from Eddie, but he doesn't have a pumpkin bomb this time around. So what does he do? He traps the Venom symbiote in that sonic cage, and then just starts doing as much webbing as he freaking can to basically just contain the damn thing. Just smother it until it gets to Doc Connors. And ultimately, he reconciles with Sandman. Harry's still alive and is still his friend. Reconciles with Mary Jane, sorry. And Eddie also goes to prison. So you got half of a Sinister Six waiting in the making. So that's the Tobey Maguire films. If we move on now quickly to the Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man, again, same thing. Alien DNA, whatever, Saiyan DNA, so he gets bit and turns into Saiyan. Again, Uncle Ben gets killed. So he immediately suffers that loss. And he nearly kills Flash, but he holds off on it. Like, barely. He literally dents in the locker when he does that. I think he goes Super Saiyan at that moment because his hair is just easier for Super Saiyan. You saw Andrew Garfield's hair in that. By the way, I do like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I actually like him more than Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire is actually my least favorite Spider-Man. And I like Tobey Maguire. I do, but he is. Andrew's actually probably my second favorite. And I think, honestly, Tom Holland right now is the best one we got. But I digress. So, anyway. He goes Super Saiyan again because Saiyan DNA, loss, rage, all that stuff. And he has to, hide his face and all of that. So Spider-Man doing his thing. Not a lot changes. The Lizard shows up for that first time. Instead, he has to save people on the bridge. Same normal thing that happened. He fights the Lizard in the sewer. Unfortunately, he's again far stronger than the Lizard once the Super Saiyan gets activated. So he actually beats the ever-loving crud out of the Lizard. And yeah, Lizard regresses to Doc Connors, and ultimately I actually think he'd be able to persuade Doc Connors against it. He has to keep him there so he can detox pretty much from the stuff, so they can work and perfect the formula. But ultimately, I think he saves Doc Connors, which also saves Captain Stacy. So yeah, so you get oh God, Lewis. Why am I blanking on the comedian's name? Why am I? I'm gonna remember it immediately as soon as I look this up. It is Dennis Leary. That's why. I was thinking Lewis for some reason. Dennis Leary, yeah. So Dennis Leary lives. Him and Gwen still, date. And yeah, because there's a complete climax that's missed. Now with the next one, interestingly, Spider-Man again takes out the Rhino, no problem. You get this fight with Electro. That is interesting because he's got key abilities technically. He's got energy capabilities where Spider-Man doesn't in this case. So he's able to fight Spider-Man. That fight actually goes all very similar, except Spider-Man's reflexes with his spider sense and his physical capabilities are just heightened that much. He has to go Super Saiyan, and even then, he's struggling against Electrode. I keep saying Electrode. I've been playing too much Pokemon. Electro, because, he shorts out one of his web shooters. Ultimately, he does take down Electro. And then, obviously, Harry Osborn releases Electro. And he becomes Green Goblin. Spider-Man fighting Electro actually goes very similar to how it goes in the original. Because Spider-Man's got strong. Because, again, there's no one to train for Ki Blast or flying in this. Now, does this one have a tail? Does this Spider-Man have a tail? Probably not. Half Saiyans kind of start to lose the tails after a while. Like Pan's not born with a tail, and of course Pan's quarter Saiyan, so that might be where the cutoff date happens. Because as far as I know, Goten and Trunks either were not born with tails, or they were born with tails and the tails were immediately removed. Even though we know tails will grow back after a certain time. And I'm running out of time, but we're almost done. So Peter doesn't have a tail. He does still beat Electro the same way he did before. Then, obviously, Harry Osborn shows up, kidnaps Gwen Stacy. The big difference here is that because he has the physicality of a Super Saiyan added on to his overall abilities, he is able to save Gwen. Gwen does not die. And that is how that ultimately ends. Spider-Man does not disappear for like 6 months. He stops to ride and everything's good. So we're at the 25-minute mark. We're going to speed rush through the remaining of the series. So we assume Uncle Ben existed in this world, and he MCU, mind you, and Peter had that. Again, he lost the tail. He probably got rid of the tail. He might. This one probably doesn't have Super Saiyan because it's just a slightly different Super Saiyan. We actually don't know how he reacted to the Uncle Ben, like rage or anything like that. He was probably sad. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, we can't give him Super Saiyan, at least not in this case. Still, he's a Saiyan, half Saiyan, fighting against Captain America. He does a lot better, but Cap still lays him out because Cap's just a more experienced fighter. Ultimately, nothing changes that. Nothing changes in Homecoming that much, up until we get to the point where he gets buried under the rubble. When he gets buried under the rubble, he's able to actually lift himself off without too much trouble. He doesn't have that moment like, come on, Spider-Man. He doesn't have that. He's also able to handle the Vulture a lot easier in his encounters, but I think the Vulture gets away because he's got tech on his side that basically Peter doesn't have an advantage for, or a defense against. Ultimately, I don't think anything changes in Homecoming that much. Infinity War. Not a lot changes in that either. Like, his hits on Thanos land a bit better, but that's about it. And they hurt a bit more, but that's about it. And then he gets dusted. And then comes back in Infinity War, or Endgame. And again, not a huge amount of a difference happening in that either. Then Far From Home happens. And honestly, not a lot changes in that either. It's actually very weird. The one universe with Spider-Man that has the least amount of effect for him being half Saiyan is MCU, because most of the villains he was fighting were using tech and things along those lines. It wasn't a physical altercation he was in most of the time, whereas in the other two franchises, he was in physical altercations the whole time. So it's actually a kind of unique thing. I hope that, like, whoever the villain for the next one is actually gives Spider-Man a legitimate fight. Like, we see Matt Gargan in Homecoming, so hopefully Scorpion there, maybe. I don't know, but ultimately that's what I think what would happen if Spider-Man, at least in the movies, was half Saiyan. Until then, though, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review at some point. Ideas for who would win, Star Wars, superhero, magic, what if, anything to do in the channel. Put that in the comments below as well. I'll get that at some point. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.